The Federal Reserve is on the verge of cutting interest rates. Here's what to know. The Federal Reserve is about to start cutting interest rates for the first time since 2020. But a big question looms. How far will they go? It won't be an easy call. For more than a year, the Fed has kept borrowing costs at their highest level in more than 2 decades. That's made it more expensive to get a car loan, finance a business, or carry a balance on a credit card. Now that the Fed has made it clear it will be cutting interest rates, it will need to decide whether to opt for a modest quarter percentage point rate cut or a more aggressive half a point cut. The uncertainty has made this meeting one of the most highly anticipated in a while. Here are 3 things to know ahead of the Fed's decision, due out on Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. What's at stake in the Fed's meeting? The only certainty is that the central bank will be cutting interest rates. That's not exactly a stop the presses headline. Fed Chairman Jerome Powell telegraphed it nearly a month ago. It's the size of the rate cut that remains in doubt. It's a tough call. Inflation has fallen substantially, with consumer prices rising by an annual 2.5% in August, down from a pandemic peak of 9.1% in June 2022. But prices are still climbing somewhat faster than the Fed would like. At the same time, the U.S. job market is starting to show some weakness. Hiring has slowed and unemployment is inching up, hitting 4.2% last month. Interest rates are currently at their highest since 2001. All in all, the data is not pointing in a clear direction, meaning the Fed could really go either way. Some economists who worry about the labor market believe that the Fed should go bigger, delivering a half percentage point cut. Others feel the Fed can be more patient, starting with a quarter percentage point cut while it continues to assess the incoming data. What are markets expecting? Bets on a quarter versus half a percentage point cut have swung widely on Wall Street. As of late afternoon on Tuesday, investors thought a larger cut was nearly twice as likely as the quarter point move. The size of the rate cut is bound to create split opinions in markets, but analysts also say that at least one thing is clear. Wednesday's rate cut won't be the last. Investors expect the Fed to continue cutting rates in the next few months, marking a turning point from an extraordinary period in the U.S. economy, when the Fed was forcing to sharply raise interest rates to fight surging inflation. Uncertainty about the pace of rate cuts will continue, but Wall Street also has other things on its plate, including the looming presidential election. September is historically a bad month for markets, and in election years, the rough patch extends through October. Investors are also keeping an eye on the tech sector, which has been volatile amid fears that companies are spending too much on artificial intelligence for too little return on their investments. It's a lot to juggle, and analysts are urging investors to be patient. I'm a little dubious about the rate cut reducing uncertainty, says Stephen Whiting, the chief investment strategist for Citi Wealth. But Whiting also noted some of this uncertainty will likely die down in coming months, especially following the U.S. elections. Ultimately, we'll get a clearer direction, he adds. No matter the size, how will cutting rates impact the U.S.? Borrowing money is going to get a little cheaper. Interest rates on car loans and credit cards should come down a bit. For people with money in the bank, on the other hand, the interest rate that they get on their savings might also drop. Meanwhile, mortgage rates have already come down in anticipation of the Fed's move. The average rate on a 30-year home loan is now 6.2%, the lowest since February 2023. That's still higher than the rates around 3% common during the pandemic, but it's substantially from the peak last year of nearly 8%. But here's one thing to keep in mind. Whether the Fed cuts rates on Wednesday by a quarter percentage point or by half a percentage point, it's going to take some time for these falling rates to really make a difference in the economy. Monetary policy is like hot water in some older houses. You can crank the water all the way to hot, but it still takes time for it to get there. Abortion providers and patients are on the move as state laws keep shifting. Anti-abortion protesters marched past the Planned Parenthood in Bloomington, Indiana, after the Rally for Life march in January 2023. The facility offers birth control and testing for sexually transmitted diseases now that abortions is banned in Indiana. Soon after, a series of state laws left a Planned Parenthood clinic in Columbia, Montana, unable to provide abortions. In 2018, it shipped some of its equipment to states where abortion remained accessible. Recovery chairs, surgical equipment, and lighting from the Missouri clinic, all expensive and perfectly good, could still be used to other health centers run by the same affiliate, Planned Parenthood Great Plains, in its 3 other states. Much of it went to Oklahoma, where the organization was expanding, CEO Emily Wales said. When Oklahoma banned abortion a few years later, it was time for that equipment to move again. Some likely ended up in Kansas, Wales said, where her group has opened 2 new clinics within just over 2 years because abortion access there is protected in the state constitution and demand is soaring. Her Kansas clinics regularly see patients from Texas, Missouri, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and even Louisiana. As Kansas is now the nearest place to get an illegal abortion for many people in the southern United States. Like the shuffling of equipment, America's abortion patients are traveling around the nation to navigate the patchwork of laws created by the Supreme Court Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization decision, which left policies on abortion to the states. Since that ruling, 14 states have enacted bans with a few exceptions, while others have limited access, but states that do not have that abortion ban in place have seen an 11% increase in clinician-provided abortions since 2020, according to the Guttmacher Institute, a national profit that supports abortion rights. Over 17,000 people traveled out of their own state to receive abortion care in 2023, according to the institute. Not all of the increase in abortions come from interstate level. Telehealth has made medication abortions easier to obtain without traveling. The number of self-managed abortions, including those done with the medication mifepristone, has risen. The Guttmacher data scientist Isaac Matto-Zimmet said the majority of the overall abortion increase in recent years came from in-state residents in places without total bans, as resources expanded to improve access. That speaks in a lot of ways to the way in which abortion access really wasn't perfect pre-Dobbs. Matto-Zimmet said, there were a lot of obstacles of getting care, and one of the biggest ones was cost. Last year, the estimated number of abortions provided in the U.S. rose to over 1 million, the highest number in a decade, according to the institute. Abortion rights activists demonstrate outside the Planned Parenthood in St. Louis on June 24, 2022, just after the Supreme Court struck down Roe v. Wade. Still, abortion opponents held an estimated drop in the procedure in the 14 states with near total bans. It's encouraging that pro-life states continue to show massive declines in their in-state abortion totals, with a drop of over 200,000 abortions since Dobbs. Kelsey Pritchard, a spokesperson for Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America, wrote in a statement. Organizations in states where abortion remains legal feel the ripples of every new ban almost instantly. One Planned Parenthood affiliate with a clinic in southern Illinois, for example, reported a roughly 10% increase in call volume in the 2 weeks following the enactment of Florida's 6-week abortion ban in May. And the Illinois-based abortion fund Midwest Access Coalition experienced a similar pattern the day of the Dobbs decision was announced in June 2022. Our hotline was insane, said Allison Dreeth, the coalition's director of strategic partnerships. People didn't know what the decision meant for their ability to access abortion, Dreeth said, including whether already scheduled appointments would still happen. The coalition helps people travel for abortions throughout 12 Midwestern states, 4 of which now have the total bans with few exceptions. After serving 800 people in 2021, The Midwest Access Coalition went on to help 1,620 in 2022 and 1,795 in 2023. Some of that increase can be attributed to the national growth of the organization, which is only about a decade old, Dreith said, but it's also a testament to its work. It pays for any mode of transportation that will get clients to a clinic, including partnering with another Illinois nonprofit with volunteer pilots who fly patients across state lines on private flights to get abortions. We also book and pay for hotel rooms, Dreith said. We give cash for food and for childcare. The National Network of Abortion Funds, a coalition of groups that offer logistical and financial assistance to people seeking abortions, said that donations increased after the Dobbs decision and that its members reported a 39% increase in requests for help in that following year. They financially supported 102,855 people that year, including both in-state and out-of-state patients, but they have also seen a staggering drop-off in donations since then. Increased awareness about the options for abortion care, spurred on by an increase in news stories about abortion since the Dobbs decision, may have fueled the rise in abortions overall, Matt Ozimit said. Both sides now await the next round of policy decisions on abortion, which voters will make in November. Ballot initiatives in at least 10 states could enshrine abortion rights, expanding access to abortions, including in 2 states with comprehensive bans. Lives will be lost with the elimination of laws that protect more than 52,000 unborn children annually, wrote Pritchard of Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America, citing an analysis on the group's website. In the meantime, Wells said her clinics in Kansas don't have enough appointments to accommodate everyone who reaches out about scheduling an abortion. In the early days of the Dobbs decision, Wells estimated only 20% of people who called the clinic were able to schedule an abortion appointment. The organization has expanded and renovated its facilities across the state, including in Wichita, Overland Park, and Kansas City, Kansas. Its newest clinic opened in August in Pittsburgh, just 30 miles from Oklahoma. But even with all that extra capacity, Wells said her group still expects to be able to schedule only just over 50% of people who inquire. We've done what we can to increase appointments, Wells said, but it hasn't replaced what were many states providing care to their local communities. A bewildered seal found itself in the mouth of a humpback whale. It's a good thing seals aren't on humpback whale's menu. A photograph by a whale-watching naturalist captured a seemingly bewildered seal in the mouth of a humpback whale after the giant marine mammal accidentally gulped it last Thursday in the waters of Anacortes, Washington. The food mix-up began while a Blue Kingdom whale and Wildfire Tours boat spotted birds flying over a school of fish and a humpback whale swimming toward it. Captain Tyler McKean said. He said the humpback then used a lunging feeding technique where the whale opens its mouth wide and takes in small fish and water. But instead of remaining underwater, afterward to filter through its baleen, it surfaced and began opening and closing its mouth. After the whale went back underwater, photographs and videos were checked by whale watchers. It took a couple seconds for everybody to pull up the frames and zoom in, McKean said. That's when we saw the seal. It was a funny moment for everybody. I mean, it probably wasn't that funny for that seal. A photograph by Burt Casanova shows the seal, which presumably was also hunting the fish, emerging from the bottom of the whale's mouth. McKean recorded a phone video where the seal is getting flushed out. I'm guessing that this situation probably happens every once in a while, just because there's lots of stuff that eat these fish too, McKean said. Humpback whales visit the Salish Sea, the inland waters between British Columbia and Washington state during their migrations. Humpback whales were hunted to local extinction in these waters, but over the last 25 years, their numbers have recovered and are now routinely seen in whale-watching tours, McKean said. He added the whale that accidentally gulped the seal is known as Big Mama, because she has been seen with 7 different calves over the years. These houses survived one of the country's worst wildfires. Here's how. Despite extreme winds and fast-moving flames, researchers say some houses in Lahaina, Hawaii, on the island of Maui, survived the wildfire last August thanks to precautions taken ahead of time. The wildfire that hit the town of Lahaina, Hawaii, was the definition of extreme. Wind gusts of over 50 miles per hour drove the flames with an alarming speed, eventually destroying more than 2,000 homes and buildings. Even in those catastrophic conditions, some homes survived. Amid the blackened rubble, small pockets of houses were standing. A pattern that's a common event within the most destructive wildfires. In the wake of Lahaina's fire in August of 2023, the surviving structures were assessed by a team from the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety, a nonprofit research group funded by the insurance industry. They study why buildings burn, even by setting some they've constructed on fire. The team found many surviving homes in Lahaina on the island of Maui had features that made them more resistant to burning, including certain building materials that the surrounding vegetation in their yards. Research shows that cost-effective products to reduce flammable brush and build homes with fire-resistant materials can reduce the chances that a house will burn. Surviving a wildfire still involves an element of luck, since even the best prepared houses can succumb in extreme conditions. But the IBHS researchers say building within wildfire in mind can make a difference, especially in places where Lahaina, where the community is surrounded by flammable grass and sees plenty of dry, windy days. Using some of these techniques to rebuild Lahaina will be key to preventing future disasters, they say. There's no guarantee in natural disasters, says Faraz Haidati, research engineer at IBHS, who worked on the report. But the available science can go a long way to reduce the risk. House number 1. A backyard cleared of brush. This is before the fire in March 21st of 2023, and this is after, on August 10th, 2023. So they didn't have that much vegetation versus the other places that caught fire. On the outskirts of Lahaina, the land is packed with dense vegetation that grows quickly during the rainy winters and dries out during the hot summers. Among many destroyed homes at the edge of town, IBHS researchers found one that is still standing. The house backyard separates it from an open hillside by about 75 feet. Prior to the fire, it was relatively clear of vegetation, containing only short grasses and shrubs. That means there was little connective fuel. The dense shrubs and trees that can carry a fire directly to a house. Fire experts recommend that homeowners create a defensible space, reducing the vegetation, particularly within 30 feet of a house. We saw in many cases that the grass was scorched, but because there was no other vegetation there to sustain longer ignition durations, the fire just stopped there, Haidati said. Being the lone surviving house in the neighborhood still comes with hardship, since structures can experience smoke damage and owners typically must move out until the area is made safe from dust and contaminants. IBHS researchers say ideally all the homes at the edge of the community would have defensible space in their yards. Just beyond them, there's open grassland. There should also be a fuel break, a buffer zone cleared of vegetation. Those precautions can reduce the risk that a fire spreads into a community at all. Another analysis by the Fire Safety Research Institute found that little work had been done around Lahaina to reduce vegetation before the fire, and the state lacks regulations and personnel to enforce it. House number 2, a fence that doesn't burn. So this is the before, a concrete fence surrounding a home, and this is after. You see everything burned. Many homeowners gravitate towards wood fencing, but wood comes with an obvious downside. The flammable material can act like a conduit for fire, carrying flames directly to a house from neighboring homes. It's an even greater risk if the fence directly touches a house via a side gate or deck. In Lahaina, one of the homes that survived was surrounded by a concrete wall instead of wood fencing. It also had little vegetation within 30 feet of the house, meaning there was no easy pathway for the heat and flames to reach it. Around Lahaina, several other homes that survived also used rock walls as fences. Those kinds of fences can limit radiation from the surrounding burning structures, Hideidi says. The home is surrounded by that heat shield. The fire is now compartmentalized, so the fire doesn't rapidly jump to the next building. House number 3, a metal roof. So this is before the fire, in March 21st of 2023, and then this is after the fire, on August 10th, 2023. Before and after. After the fire, images of one particular house made the headlines. Standing alone among the ashes, a house with a bright red roof was dubbed the Miracle House. A year before the fire, the owners had completed a renovation of the historic home. Having battled termites, they replaced an old roof with a commercial-grade metal. They also got rid of the vegetation directly around the exterior walls of the home, replacing it with a buffer of river rocks. Research shows that the vegetation within 5 feet of a house is one of the most important things for homeowners to focus on. The metal roof likely helped impede one of the main ways that the fire spreads, from embers. In wildfires, winds carry small bits of burning debris in the air, casting them far away from the fire itself. When embers land on a wood shingle roof, they can ignite the house, spreading the fire to new neighborhoods. A metal roof resists embers as does any other type of Class A roof material, which includes tiles or asphalt shingles. I think it's a combination of a commercial-graded, corrugated metal roof, the stone area around the house, and the palms around the house that absorb the heat, and a lot of divine intervention, owner Trip Milken told NPR. House number 4, fire-resistant building materials. So this is before the fire on March 21st, and this is after. Before and after. Like many communities, homes in Lahaina are densely packed, the smaller lots allowing for little space between the houses. That can help spread a wildfire. When the radiating heat from one burning house is powerful enough to ignite its neighbors. Still, one Lahaina house survived despite being only 10 feet from its neighbor. The home was constructed with fire-resistant building material that aren't as susceptible to sparks and heat. Its side is non-combustible, which can be achieved with many commonly used materials like stucco or fiber cement. The roof was made with asphalt shingles. The windows are also double paned with tempered glass. That helps prevent them from shattering under intense thermal stress, which provides an entry point for fire. Using fire-resistant building materials doesn't mean a house is fireproof, especially if high winds are pushing the flames directly onto it. But a combination of building materials and defensible space can resist a wildfire under the right conditions. and importantly, break the chain of fire spreading from house to house. If you don't have a connected fuel that uses non-combustible materials, we can give a chance for building to survive, Hidaiti says, and the chain of conflagration or building-to-building fire spread will break after we see the first few homes resisting the high-intensity exposure from other buildings. Here's everything we know about the apparent assassination attempt on Trump. Law enforcement officials work outside the Trump International Golf Club in West Palm Beach, Florida, on September 16th, the day after the apparent assassination attempt on former President Trump, the Republican presidential nominee. Former President Donald Trump was targeted in what appears to be an attempted assassination on Sunday afternoon, the FBI says. A suspect, Ryan Wesley Routh, is in custody after being identified as a man seen with a rifle at Trump's golf club in West Palm Beach, Florida. The incident began around 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time on the Trump International Golf Course where the former president was playing. It ended miles away after Routh's vehicle was spotted on Interstate 95. It occurred 2 months after Trump was wounded in an assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania. Here's a rundown of the facts that are known so far. The ongoing investigation. Palm Beach County, Florida, Sheriff Rick Bradshaw said Monday that the security plans for Trump worked as it should have. What we did yesterday proves that the system can work because the suspect didn't even get close to getting a round off, and we apprehended him and brought him to justice, Bradshaw said. U.S. Secret Service Acting Director Ronald Rowe said that the suspect never even had a line of sight on Trump. It's unclear how long the suspect was in Florida, but it does appear he acted alone, said FBI agent in charge Jeffrey B. Veltri. Bradshaw told the reporters that Trump called him Sunday to thank him for everything authorities did. The suspect now faces federal gun charges. Police patrol on a bridge beside the Mar-a-Lago estate of Republican presidential nominee and former President Donald Trump. As a supporter flies flags to express support for Trump one day after an apparent assassination attempt in Palm Beach, Florida. Routh appeared in a federal courtroom in West Palm Beach on Monday, where he was charged with 2 gun-related offenses: possession of a firearm as a convicted felon and possession of a firearm with an obliterated serial number. Routh, who was represented by a federal public defender, told federal judge Ryan McCabe that he has no savings to pay for his defense. Wearing a blue prison jumpsuit and shackles, he also said he has a 25-year-old son. Agreeing with the prosecutor's request, judge ordered Routh to remain in custody until a formal arraignment on September 30th. Routh's cell phone provider offered data suggesting that he had been near the golf course for nearly 12 hours, from 1:59 a.m. to 1:31 p.m., according to court documents. A Secret Service agent spotted a gun. Law enforcement personnel investigate the area around Trump International Golf Club after an apparent assassination attempt of former President Donald Trump on Sunday. As Trump moved through the golf course on Sunday, so did a bubble of security that the security service extends around him. An agent who was ahead of Trump on the course was able to spot his rifle barrel sticking out of the fence and immediately engaged that individual, at which time the individual took off, Sheriff Bradshaw said. The weapon was spotted in an area of the golf course where 3 holes, 5, 6, and 7, turn a corner close to an intersection where 2 large roads meet, Congress Avenue and Summit Boulevard. From his vantage point, the suspect could view 2 holes on the course, Bradshaw said. Agents fired at the suspect. The U.S. Secret Service personnel fired 4 to 6 rounds as they shot at the suspect from a long distance, said FBI Special Agent in Charge Rafael Barros. The suspect fled in a car and headed toward I-95, less than 2 miles to the east. In the bushes where this guy was is an AK-47 style rifle with a scope, 2 backpacks which were hung on the fence that had a ceramic tile in them, and a GoPro camera, Bradshaw said, noting that the suspect was seemingly intent on filming what took place. The weapon was identified as an SKS-style rifle. Its design slightly predates the AK-47, according to the criminal complaint against Routh. Both guns use the same 7.62 x 39mm round. and the SKS was notably used by Viet Cong snipers in the Vietnam War, according to the Violence Policy Center. The center adds that an SKS-style gun was used in 2 high-profile attacks in the past decade, one at a baseball field where members of Congress played in 2017, and another at a Planned Parenthood clinic in Colorado in 2015. The June 2017 attack on a congressional baseball game practice in Alexandria, Virginia, left 5 wounded, including then House Majority Whip Steve Scalise and 2 Capitol Police officers. At the time of the Sunday's encounter, Trump was 1 or 2 holes away, probably between 300 and 500 yards, from the suspect's location, Bradshaw said. But the rifle and scope like that, that's not a long distance, he added. Photos from the scene depict what looks to be an improvised sniper's nest, with backpacks hung next to each other on the fence, with a space in between them. The placement of ceramic tiles suggests the suspect likely intended them to provide armor against any incoming gunfire. A witness took a picture of the suspect's license plate. Ryan Wesley Ruth, seen here in a screen grab from a rally held in central Kyiv in April of 2022, was identified as a suspect in what federal officials say was an apparent assassination attempt against former President Donald Trump in Florida. Police converged on the golf course after the Secret Service reported shots fired. Bradshaw says law enforcement then got a big break. Unfortunately, we were able to locate a witness that came to us and said, "Hey, I saw the guy running out of the bushes. He jumped into a black Nissan and I took a picture of the vehicle and the tag," which was great. A license plate reader system reported that the vehicle was on I-95, driving north toward nearby Martin County. The sheriff's office in that county then pulled the Nissan SUV over around 2:14 p.m. and arrested Ruth after the witness identified him as a suspect from the golf course. According to court records, Routh, 58, allegedly said that he knew why he was being pulled over. The license plate on Routh's Nissan belonged to another vehicle, a white Ford pickup whose tag was reported stolen, according to the criminal complaint. Routh is a former Trump supporter. Routh spent much of his adulthood in North Carolina before moving to Hawaii in 2018. He owns a business that builds portable storage units and tiny homes in Oahu. His digital footprint depicts Ruth as a disillusioned former Trump supporter who backs Ukraine in its war against Russia. Routh has an extended criminal history, including a conviction on a felony charge of possessing a weapon of mass destruction in 2002. Public records list him as the defendant in multiple court cases on matters from bad checks to tax delinquencies. Between 2001 and 2010, he was also charged with numerous misdemeanors. FBI agent Veltri said the suspect was the subject of a 2019 tip to the FBI, which accused him of being a felon in possession of a firearm. Veltri says they investigated, but the tip fell apart. North Carolina voting records show Ruth voted in the recent Democratic primary election there, but he is listed as unaffiliated with any party. He has written in a self-published 2023 book about voting for Trump in 2016 and regretting it. Federal Election Commission records show Ruth donated to the Democratic fundraising platform, Acute Blue, nearly 20 times, in amounts ranging from $1 to $25 between September 2019 and March 2020. Trump, Harris, and Biden respond. There were gunshots in my vicinity, but before rumors start spiraling out of control, I wanted you to hear this first. I am safe and well, Trump said in a statement sent out by his campaign on Sunday afternoon. He pledged not to slow down his campaigning, and he later thanked the Secret Service and local law enforcement for their actions. Trump's opponent in the 2024 presidential race, Vice President Harris, condemned political violence, saying on Sunday that she was deeply disturbed by the incident. I am thankful that former President Trump is safe, Harris said. I commend the U.S. Secret Service and law enforcement partners for their vigilance. In an event on Monday, President Biden also condemned political violence and the attempted assassination against our former president, saying the ballot box, not a gun, is how America resolves differences. Creative ways communities are reducing food waste. When we started working on this year's Climate Solutions Week, all about the future of food, we realized the solutions seem to fall into 3 groups: what we grow, how we cook and eat, and what we often end up wasting. Below are a few community-led solutions to the latter. While lots of powerful changes can start at home, sometimes the scale of the problem benefits from a community-wide approach. First, understanding the scale of the problem. It doesn't feel good throwing away food, and food going to waste isn't great for the planet either. To help understand the scale of the problem, WBUR Boston created a quiz to explore the amount of food produced in the U.S. that goes to waste. Oyster reefs on the Alabama coast, like many others in the Gulf South, have taken a beating from climate change. Returning oyster shells to the water helps more oysters grow in their place to play an important role in their ecosystem. They filter and improve the water quality, give home to fish, crabs, and other animals, and help the erosion by providing natural protection to the shoreline. Since starting the program, the Alabama Coastal Foundation has collected over 22.6 million shells covering over 57 acres of land. Some of the shells used in another program designed to help the oyster populations increase. Oyster gardening. California is getting kids involved. The K-8 students at the Wesley School in North Hollywood adorned a series of 5-foot containers with a giant banner that reads, 5,220 pounds of food waste saved from landfills. It would have been much easier for the campus staff to toss the school's food waste into the city-provided green bin, but thanks to California's law that requires municipal food waste recycling, just taking it out of sight would miss the point, says their science teacher, Jonna Hampton Walker. When it's invisible like that, they don't see it, she says. They know it, but it doesn't sink in. Where that compost ends up can also have a powerful impact. Food waste collected from residences in the city is being used to support almond orchards outside the city. Last fall, after an unseasonably wet and unpredictable growing season, volunteers gathered at Kimball Fruit Farms, located at the New Hampshire-Massachusetts border, to glean. The process entails picking leftover produce to share with people in need before it goes bad. Not only does it cut down on produce going to waste, but it serves as a reminder of the labor that goes into growing and gathering food. There are people who do this every single day for their livelihoods, said Paula Morin, the United Way of Greater Nashua. If you come out and you volunteer one day a year, big deal. But at least it gives you appreciation of how hard people work. Using underutilized land to grow free food. David Thompson is an urban farmer in Tacoma, Washington, who is trying to fight insecurity by connecting people to fresh fruits and vegetables. Thompson founded Food is Free Tacoma in 2015, which eventually turned into the nonprofit organization Food is Free Washington. Food is Free volunteers grow fresh produce and give away to people who need it in public areas like park strips and in residents' front and backyards. There are dozens of sites across the city called Food Independence Gardens, or FIGs. To date, the organization has given away tons of food to people and families throughout the Pierce County. NPR's Life Kit has lots of resources to help make reducing the waste you produce at home a more sustainable part of your daily life. TikTok argued against its U.S. ban in court today. Here's what happened. TikTok asked a panel of federal appeal judges on Monday to overturn a law that would ban the app in the U.S. by January unless it fully divests from its Beijing-based parent company, ByteDance. TikTok was in federal court Monday, fighting for its survival as a January deadline looms that could put the app out of business in the U.S. After several hours of questioning, however, it was difficult to gauge which way the court is leaning in the high-stakes legal saga that is the most dire yet challenge TikTok has faced. The three judges that sit on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit appeared dubious of TikTok's plea that the free expression surpasses the national security concerns of Washington. That's because TikTok's parent company, ByteDance, is based in China, an adversary of the United States. At the same time, the judges also pointed out that the millions of American TikTok users and TikTok U.S. operations do have First Amendment protections, and the government shutting down the app would violate those rights. In April, President Biden signed a law giving TikTok's parent company, ByteDance, 90 days to find a non-Chinese buyer or be banned nationwide. At stake: free speech versus national security. Unless overturned, the law is set to take in effect on January 19. If this case drags on, an extension appears likely. The legal battle in Washington showcases the most high-profile fight to date between digital free speech and protection of national security. President Biden's administration is defending the law banning TikTok that Congress passed. Former President Trump has said on a campaign trail that he now supports TikTok's existence in the U.S. and about face from his efforts shut down the app when he was in the White House. For its part, the Justice Department has asked the three-judge panel issuing a ruling by December. Whatever the ruling, it can be appealed to a full panel of the Federal Appeals Court. After that, either side can ask the U.S. Supreme Court to review the decision. TikTok says it's being singled out. Lawyers for TikTok argue that the app is being unfairly singled out, claiming that forcing the shutdown of the service used by 170 million Americans is a gross violation of the First Amendment rights of U.S. users. TikTok's lawyer Andrew Pincus argued that the government wants to ban TikTok. It has to show what's known in legal lingo as strict scrutiny, which means a compelling reason for doing so, and it must prove that it has exhausted all the other ways of dealing with TikTok's issues before banning. He said the government has failed both tests. Circuit Judge Sri Srivansan asked, "What if the United States is at war with a country and that country controls a media company in America?" By TikTok's logic, the judge said the U.S. could not ban the media company without clearing this high legal hurdle. Congress can't bar the enemy's ownership of a major media source in the U.S., Srivansan said. TikTok lawyer Pincus compared TikTok to Politico and Business Insider, two media outlets owned by a German publisher. American writers for those publications still have rights in the U.S. Being owned by a foreign adversary is playing a key role. A big difference, says Srivansan, is that Politico and Business Insider are not owned by a foreign adversary. TikTok, he said, is owned by ByteDance, a company based in China. Federal Appeals Judge Naomi Rao asked Jeffrey Fisher, a lawyer representing TikTok creators, if TikTokers have a First Amendment interest in those who exactly own the platform. Absolutely yes, Fisher said. We still have an interest in working with whatever foreign publisher we want, he said, citing new organizations like Al Jazeera, which is based in Qatar, and Swedish-owned streaming service Spotify. Department of Justice lawyer Denny said TikTok compiles vast troves of data from millions of Americans who use it. The problem is, the same data is extremely valuable to a foreign adversary trying to compromise the United States, Tenney said. It is possible, Tenney insisted, that ByteDance one day manipulates its algorithm to boost pro-China videos, or try to turn Americans against the U.S. in an attempt to recruit the intelligence asset, he said. Srivansan shot back that whatever Americans are seeing on the app, they are choosing to view it. Banning the app, he said, would take that right away. The fact that they're being denied subjects, this is serious First Amendment scrutiny, Srivansan said. Rao said that the law singles out TikTok where U.S. citizens and TikTok's U.S. entity is engaged in protected speech, the judge said. Judges acknowledged that whatever the basis was for passing the law, the court will show deference to Congress that it was indeed established a legitimate national security threat. The question is whether that scrutiny risk is enough to justify speech restrictions. What exactly the Department of Justice has against TikTok has been hotly debated in the case. Biden administration has outlined in broad terms that TikTok's link to Chinese tech company is a national security concern, but whether the Chinese government has ever accessed Americans' data or influenced the app has been left secret. Significant portions of the Department of Justice's case have been redacted or blacked out, with Biden administration officials claiming that releasing it, even to TikTok lawyers, could pose exceptionally grave damage to America's national security. We haven't seen what's in the confidential secret submissions, TikTok lawyer Pincus told the court. Judge Rao, TikTok uses strange rationale to overturn law. It's almost as if TikTok is asking the court to send the law back to Congress to be amended, Rao said. Rao at one point said that was a very strange framework for trying to overturn the law by attacking Congress, legislative authority. I know Congress doesn't legislate all the time, but here they did. They actually passed a law. And many of your arguments want us to treat them like they're an agency. Pincus replied, "It's an unusual law, though. It's a pretty unusual law." High-stakes hearing follows years of scrutiny on TikTok. Since TikTok's rise in the pandemic as the go-to app in America, the U.S. lawmakers have been scrutinizing its ties to China. TikTok boasts more than 170 million users in America, or more than half of the population. Also, some 90% of the app's users are outside of the U.S., having gained a foothold globally as a premier social app for its highly addictive, fast-paced videos. The lawmakers and national security officials in Washington have long feared that the Chinese government could manipulate TikTok's feed to amplify videos that promote China's view of the world. There are additional worries over Chinese government spying and the misuse of Americans' data. TikTok, for its part, says it has invested more than $2 billion on a company restructuring that isolates the app's U.S. operation. Headquartered in the Los Angeles area from ByteDance, which is based in Beijing, the plan has been dubbed Project Texas. Since TikTok partnered with Austin-based cloud computing firm Oracle to supervise the flow of data and the scrutiny of the app. The court documents in TikTok's lawsuit show that the Biden administration nearly reached a deal to resolve the issues. A national security agreement between the U.S. and TikTok was drawn up, and the executives at the tech company were hopeful its efforts would allay the lawmakers' fears. Before the deal could be finalized, however, a number of China hawks in the White House intervened with an ultimatum. Sell the app to a non-Chinese company or group of outside investors or be banned in the U.S. If banned, Apple and Google would be forced by law to remove TikTok from the app stores, making it impossible for TikTok to send software updates to the app, eventually rendering it inoperable. Under the law, doing business with TikTok would become a federal crime.